Long time no see. Hisashiburi da na. I am so grateful, so excited to be back here today to talk to you about my experience of backpacking through Europe. I was gone from September of last year to the end of November. I got back on like November 30th. And what a wild ride it was. It truly was one of the most impactful and powerful experiences of my life. And I know I sound like every other dude ever who's gone on a backpacking trip now. But I want to talk to you specifically about what I learned, what I got out of the experience, and then a couple of things that I think were unique to backpacking during COVID. That was, I think, something that added like a little bit of extra zest and spice and icing on top of the cake, and whatever type of thing you want to use to describe that. I'd love to share a little bit more about that. So what I want to talk about during this video is kind of the top 10 things that I learned as a result of this time, the 3 months that I spent traveling through Europe. And I'll talk about like where I went and what I saw and what I did at some other time. But I really want to focus on the lessons that I got and what I received. So first and foremost, I cannot emphasize this enough. If you want to travel during COVID, and I highly encourage that you do, I really truly do. I think it's an incredible experience. Release control. You cannot control the things that are going to happen out in the world right now. Period. End of story. There's going to be train tickets that don't line up, and flights that get canceled, and events that you can't go to, and every single thing that you can't go to is perfect. It is an opportunity to say yes, to say thank you for not being able to do the thing that I wanted to do and go pivot. I don't get to be in control of what's open. I don't get to be in control of whether or not I wear a mask in the country that I'm in. I don't get to be in control of if the restaurant is open or if they have seating available, whatever. I can't be in control, but you know what I can do? I can be in charge of being Jordan Patrick Quinn, putting a smile on my face and showing up anyway. Number 2, the only country that I went to, the only city that I went to that I really had any expectations around was Amsterdam. It was the first place that I went. I had specifically planned my trip so that I would be landing first thing there, and that would be where I kind of like hit the landing strip, right? And because it was the only country I had any expectations about, or the only city I had expectations about, it was also really the only country I felt that like didn't live up to those. It was the only place that I went where I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's so beautiful. And it's not quite what I thought it was going to be. And that's not a slight against Amsterdam at all. It's one of the coolest, most impressive, and most amazing places I've ever been. But I had built it up to be like, 18 billion feet tall. Because I have read The Fault in Our Stars like 17 times, and there is no amount of beauty in the world that can make up for the weight I attached to that book destroying my heart and soul over and over and over again in middle and high school. So and this is very trite, it's a very cliche saying, right? But expectation truly is the thief of joy. And I had an incredible time in Amsterdam. It really was an amazing place. I met some of the coolest people that I've ever met, but specifically like some of the coolest people I met during my travels there. Shout outs to Russ. If you're watching this, brother, thinking about you. You're amazing. And let's move on to number 3. Get lost. This is something I started doing when I was in Tokyo in 2019. I would just wake up and I would do like maybe one Google Map search for like something I knew I wanted to see that day, and that would be it. And I would also do the best that I could to not check my map again for the rest of the day. I ended up living in Barcelona for a month and a half. I stayed there and I rented a loft right next to La Sagrada Familia. And every single day I set out and I said, okay, I'm gonna do everything I can to not use my GPS today. I wanna see if I can get to the place that I wanna go, whether I was going to see something that Gaudi built, or going to a restaurant, or a flamenco show, or a jazz show, or any of the things that I like to do. I said, let's see if I can get there. And then after I've, thrown a few back, let's see if I can get home. And it doesn't matter if I can get back in an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I wasn't working. I had all the time in the world. And so it gave me a really tremendous opportunity, again, to release control and get lost and see what I stumbled upon. I'll share my map of Barcelona from all the things that I pinned. And I would say 95% of those, I only found Because I set out with the intention of getting lost. Like, there's a mall in Barcelona inside of the Gothic Quarter that every single store is themed for a different anime, manga, or piece of like fantasy or science fiction. So there's like a Star Wars store, a Harry Potter store, a Ichiban Kuji store, which if you know what that is, like the best figures out there, or some of the best, a One Piece store, a Dragon Ball store, a Naruto store. They had everything. And the only reason I found that is because I got lost wandering through the Gothic Quarter. So go get lost. Release control. 4, and this is kind of similar, but treat navigation as a game. Wake up every day and say, oh man, wow, where am I going? Is that north of me? Is that south of me? Is that east, west? Have I been there before? Can I get back? That was something I would always try and do, especially with like coffee shops or restaurants or something. If I didn't take note of it, or I didn't get the chance to go and actually eat there when I was walking by because I was too full from the last meal I had or whatever, I'd be like, oh man, can I get back here? One of my favorite things that I did in Spain was I took a tapas crawl. I had hired out like a local guide to take a group of us out, and they didn't have a list of the restaurants they took us to, but I knew roughly where we started, right? I had like a pin on the map for where the tour started. I said, okay, can I find all 5 of these places again? Is that possible? And I found 3 out of the 5 on my own just by wandering. And I got to re-experience some of the food that we ate and be really proud of myself for learning how to navigate this city. Something else that I did, this was an absolute horror story, and I'd love to tell you more about it another time, but I decided to walk back from Guetaria, which is a small fishing village in north coast of Spain. I wanted to walk back from there to San Sebastian, where I was staying, and as like kind of a reverse version of my own Camino del Norte. And I got so lost, it's not even funny. Like 6 hours in, it was pitch black. I was walking through Spanish farm country. Every house I walked by had guard dogs that were like running out and barking at me. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Whew. And I just decided to play a game of it. Like, where's the next place I recognize? Where could I go? How can I get back? And I just kind of removed the expectation of living, fingers crossed, and treated it as a game of, can I get back home? And it was one of the coolest, most fun days of my life, even though it was also horrifying and really scary and challenging, but it was amazing. 5, I'm probably gonna get lots of meh for this. COVID cannot stop you from having a beautiful experience in Europe. I can't speak to the rest of the world, but what I can tell you is I don't personally feel like I missed out on anything as a result of traveling during COVID. Pretty much everything I wanted to go to was open. If anything, I feel blessed to have traveled during COVID because there weren't as many people around. I got to experience so many different things, see a lot more like local people out in the world, and a lot of like these crazy packed tourist destinations ended up not really being that busy. Especially once it got a little bit later into like late October, late November, where it was cold as all hell in Paris. Like, it was mostly me and my family and a bunch of French people. And I got to experience that city through an entirely different lens than I think I will ever get to experience again, because COVID was such a unique time. And yeah, are there things you're gonna have to pivot on? Sure. There were other things that like maybe I didn't get to do on the timeline I thought that I was gonna go do, or maybe like restaurants that I couldn't get into or whatever. Yeah, totally. But none of that prevented me from having an earth-shattering, joyful, beautiful experience. I don't think it's possible. So if I could suggest anything there, again, on release control, be open to the possibility that traveling right now during COVID might be the best time you could travel. It might be full of completely unique or different experiences that you would never otherwise get to have. I don't feel like I lost out at all by traveling during COVID, and I can't say for sure what your experience will be, but I would strongly suggest that going now to wherever you want to go, assuming you can. Like, I still can't go to Japan, not that I'm salty about it or anything. But if you can go, go. Don't let COVID be the thing that stops you. On that note, number 6, every country in Europe that I went to handles COVID very differently. And it can be really jarring as you're like going from border to border and country to country and city to city. But like starting in Amsterdam, there were 0 restrictions they were, as I'm sure many of you know, Holland is kind of taking like a herd immunity approach. So like everything was open, full capacity. The only time I needed to wear masks were in the Rijksmuseum, and even that was like negligible, I would say. But like pretty much everything was open. Contrast that with Germany and France, where for the most part you needed to show a vaccination card to be able to get in anywhere. Now at this point, pretty much everyone in Europe knows to expect like white paper American vaccine cards. So if you don't have like a digital EU certificate, I personally didn't have any problems with that, so I can't guarantee you won't, but the paper card was enough. But yeah, like Germany, France, you couldn't even go into a McDonald's or a Starbucks without a vaccine card. So like that was super locked down. I felt like Prague and the Czech Republic, again, very open city. I didn't have to show much of anything in the way of vaccination cards. Didn't really need to wear a mask anywhere. But this is so key. Wherever you are a guest in that country. You are a guest in that city. Your political opinions or your medical opinions do not apply. Sorry. Fall in line with whatever that country is expecting you to do and whatever the people around you there are expecting to do, and you will have an incredibly beautiful experience. Standing out as the American who won't stick to the rules of the place that is so graciously hosting you during a global pandemic is not the most skillful decision. I can't say I would recommend doing that. So every country is going to handle it differently. Every city is going to handle it differently. My recommendation to you would be to fall in line with whatever those guidelines are, even if they differ from what your opinions are of like how COVID should be handled, and just meet the expectations of the people around you and be willing to be curious about like why do they view things differently? How are they approaching it differently? And like what does that do to your experience as a result? 7, get out there and meet some local people, especially during COVID, right? Like there's a little bit less tourism, a little bit less kind of the vagabonders or the backpackers around. Like some of the hostels I stayed in were pretty much just dead and empty. So if you want to have a connected experience, a communal experience, find some local people. Whether that's like through booking an Airbnb experience, which I personally got tremendous utility out of doing. Some of the closest friends that I've made on that trip, who I'm still in contact with on an almost daily basis, I met as a result of Airbnb experiences. When I was living in Barcelona, again, I took a paella cooking class and became very close with the host of that. And she actually invited me back to take the experience multiple times for free and like get to hang out and connect with her and her family. And then obviously, as a result of connecting with her, a whole bunch of other people in the experience. Same thing with a tapas crawl. Met a wonderful woman named Mina from Sweden. Mina, if you're watching this, you're amazing. I'm so grateful to know you. I can't wait for the wedding in June. And she's gonna be my +1 to a wedding in Sweden now. Like all of these things happened as a result of meeting locals. That said, some of the most challenging experiences I had were as a result of meeting locals. I was sitting outside of the cafe in Amsterdam one night when 2 older guys asked me to come sit with them. It was a Greek man named Nico and a Scottish man named Robert. And they both lived in Amsterdam now full time, but we had a really challenging interaction around like, how do I even want to put this? Like, I think the exact phrasing, I was kind of just sitting and observing and trying to be curious and ask questions and not really inject too much of my own opinion. And at one point, Robert was like, what do you even have to offer this conversation? And I was like, bro, you asked me to come sit with you. I don't know. I can't say for sure what I have to offer. But I remained curious, and I look back on that time now still as like one of the most challenging, but also like most growth-inducing interactions I had on that trip. And it only happened because I was open to the opportunity of like getting to sit and interact with a local. Same thing on my trip to Greece before this backpacking trip. Like just go meet the locals to the best of your ability. Become a regular at coffee shops and restaurants if you're there long enough. I was a regular at this place called Syra Coffee in Barcelona. I went pretty much every day. And my Spanish is not great, but I was challenging myself to use my Spanish every day, and they helped me tremendously in getting to practice. And by the time I left, I had a friendship with some of the people working there. There's another restaurant called Gasteria in Barcelona that I would fly back to Barcelona just to go. It's a little hole-in-the-wall joint that does tapas and pinchos, but the atmosphere is unlike anything I've ever experienced. It's amazing. If you're ever in Barcelona, go to Gasteria and have an amazing time. But again, it's like a locals-only kind of place. And the only reason I found these is because of the opportunity I had to meet local people who made their recommendations to me. I'm like, hey, this is where I would go hang out. And it changed everything for me. Number 8, if you aren't a museum person or an adventure person or a whatever type of person, there is no reason to go do those things just because you feel like you should. It will not be an enjoyable experience if your experience is anything like mine. Now, there's obviously an opportunity to be curious and explore new things. I think that's one of the greatest aspects of traveling, especially solo traveling. It's like I get to try on different coats, right, and see if they fit, try on different hats and see if they fit. But if like you just know categorically, like, I don't like coffee, just being in Italy is not a great excuse to start ripping espresso every single day if you hate it. Like, why hate fuck your way through anything? Especially if you're on a trip of a lifetime. So again, I would say if you can release expectations, release control, and kind of just show up as yourself. And yeah, be open to new stuff that like maybe you wouldn't normally try. It feels stretchy or uncomfortable. Go do that. But if there's something that you don't enjoy, there's no reason to feel guilty for not enjoying that. There's no reason to behold yourself or force yourself into going and checking out something that's just not going to stick for you. That's okay. If you can't give yourself permission to do that, let me give you permission to just do the things you want to do and the things that you love to do. And screw the rest. Whatever happens, happens. Number 9, there are like at least 18 billion, if not more, different ways to be a person. And it's entirely possible that there are aspects of that are going to be more skillful than the way that you show up in the world. Or it could be a way or an opportunity for you to grow and shift and behave differently in the world. And so, again, I've said this probably 18 billion times, so this maybe isn't even its own bullet point anymore, but like, be curious. Show up, ask people questions, try to understand how they live their lives, why they live in the places that they do, why they do the things that they do. And who knows, maybe you'll find a new friend for life, maybe you'll find a romantic partner, maybe you'll find a passion or a hobby that otherwise you never would have explored. These are all possibilities. And it happens as a result of recognizing that like my way is not the only way. It's certainly not the best way. And there are endless opportunities for me to grow, shift, and change over time. And being open to the people around me who can teach me that is one of the best things that I can do for myself and for my long-term growth. And lastly, this is again cliche, it's trite, but number 10, wherever you go, there you are. Let me say that one more time. Wherever you go, there you are. I had quit my job. I was on a mini retirement at the ripe old age of 27. I was seeing countries and places and people and things I had only ever dreamed about seeing as a kid. And there were still days that I woke up and I was isolated and I was tired and I was alone and I was scared and I was bored. All of these things, like, they don't just stop. Whatever trauma I have, whatever emotional state or emotional deficiencies that I have or might experience, don't just disappear into the void because I'm traveling. Now, it's an amazing opportunity to grow through some of those things, to shift my perspective on some of the things that like I don't love about myself or that I don't understand about myself. Like going and playing in the world in a new environment with no expectations about who I am. Holy crap. Amazing, amazing opportunity to shift, to grow, to change. But if I'm just like dug in, right, and I'm like, I refuse, I am not changing, I'm going to be the person that I am, it's sticking with me. Like, my shit still stunk. And it's not a panacea. Traveling is one of the most incredible ways you can ever choose to spend your time. I learned more during those 3 months than I probably learned in the last 5 years about myself and about the world. I grew tremendously. I experienced more joy and love and freedom than in almost any other time in my life. And I also experienced some of the most intense pain and discomfort that I've ever experienced in my entire life. And both of those things are beautiful. But if I resist and I hesitate and I feel stuck in my ways, it's probably going to be even more painful. So So traveling's not gonna fix it all, but traveling is an amazing teacher. Traveling can be a guide. Traveling can be a new experience or a new friend or any of these things. And it can teach you so much. It can teach you so much. So that is my top 10 things that I learned as a result of my time backpacking through Europe last fall. Thank you so much for watching, for taking the time to join me on this ride and on this explanation. And I cannot wait to continue sharing my life and my journey with you. I am committing to 2 videos a week. I've got one more coming out this week that's gonna be about my journey through my eating disorder and body dysmorphia, and how I came to be someone who loved to travel and enjoy food and engage in different cultures and all these things that were not part of my experience before the last few years when I was so rigid and I was in the bodybuilding sphere. So I'm gonna share about my journey coming out of that. I cannot wait for you to join on that ride. And then the week after that, we're back to cooking, baby. I can't wait to show you my new apartment and the new kitchen and dive headfirst into some of my favorite things to eat. Some of the things that I learned to cook while I was traveling. And obviously, a lot of Japanese food and ramen. I love you all so much. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I'll talk to you next time.